I'm Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old. And last month, I lost the love of my life. But the real heartbreak? It wasn't just losing my husband, Mark. It was what my own parents did the night he died. That was the night I realized I wasn't their daughter anymore. I was just an inconvenience in the way of their celebration. I'll never forget it. It was a Tuesday, ordinary, gray, forgettable. Until it wasn't. At 10:47 a.m., I got the call. Mark collapsed at work. His assistant was panicking, words tumbling out between sobs. Ambulance, no pulse, Northwestern Memorial. I dropped my coffee. The sound of that mug shattering still rings in my ears like a scream frozen in time. By 11:23 a.m., Mark was gone. Massive heart attack. The doctors said there was nothing they could have done. But try telling that to a wife who saw him kiss her goodbye just hours earlier. To a little girl still waiting for her daddy at school with her art project in hand. When I finally made it home, shaking and shattered, I had to do the unthinkable: tell our 8-year-old daughter, Mia, that her daddy wasn't coming back. Ever. And then, I needed my family. With trembling fingers, I called my parents. Just hearing my mom's voice warm, familiar, I thought, maybe I won't have to carry this alone. But I was wrong. "Oh, honey," she said, laughing in the background. "Can it wait until tomorrow? We're right in the middle of your sister's birthday dinner. Sophia's 40th. Balloons, caterers, champagne." My world was ending and they were singing happy birthday. "Mark died," I said. "Today. This morning." There was a pause. I thought maybe, finally, I had cut through. Instead, my mom said, "Are you sure? Maybe there's been a mistake." No mistake. I touched his face. I watched his chest refuse to rise again. "Well, this is a shock," she said. "But we have guests. Can you manage tonight? We'll come by tomorrow." Click. I stared at my phone, unsure if I'd imagined the whole thing. But the silence in my kitchen, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the muffled cries of my daughter upstairs, that was real. So was the absence of my parents. Their love. Their decency. They didn't show up. Not that night. Not even a few hours later. Not even when I begged. Instead, I sat on the bathroom floor, door locked, pressing my fist to my mouth so Mia wouldn't hear me sobbing. If you've ever felt abandoned at your lowest, like the people who were supposed to catch you just turned away, I need you to stay with me. Because this story isn't just about grief. It's about betrayal. And the moment I found the strength to stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" 2 nights later, after the funeral arrangements had started falling into place and I was running on caffeine and tears, my dad called. Not to ask how I was doing. Not to check in on Mia. But to ask if Mark's life insurance policy was in order. "You should call the company first thing tomorrow," he said, like he was talking about a leaky roof. I should have hung up. But I didn't. I still wanted to believe they cared. 4 days after Mark passed, we held the funeral. Mia wore her favorite blue dress. Mark always said she looked like a princess in blue. She clutched his old tie in her hands during the service, her little knuckles white. Mark's colleagues from the firm wept openly. Grown men. Women who'd worked beside him for years, people who'd only met him once. And my parents? They showed up late. Made a scene finding their seats. And when I looked up from the podium mid-eulogy, I saw Sophia checking her phone. My father, glancing at his watch. The people who should have held me up that day were too busy being inconvenienced by death. But the final blow didn't come until a week later. They showed up at my door unannounced. Said they wanted to talk about the future. Mia was at school, thank God. "We're just thinking long-term," my dad said, sipping the coffee I made for them. "You're in a strong financial position now. And your mother and I, our retirement account took a hit. Healthcare, housing, you know how it is." Then came the ask. 50% of the life insurance payout, he said. To help secure our future. And maybe set aside some for Sophia. She's been struggling with her art business. The coffee cup trembled in my hand. 50%. Of the money meant to carry me and my daughter through this nightmare. Family helps family, he added, like he was the hero in this horror show. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. The silence was louder than any scream. And in that moment after, the funeral, the voicemail, the party, the audacity, I realized they hadn't just failed me. They had shown me who they really were. The question now was, what was I going to do about it? Was I going to keep begging for scraps of compassion? Or was I finally ready to stand up for me, for Mia, and for the love of the man we had lost? That's when I decided this story wasn't going to end with grief. It was going to begin with truth. And when that truth came out, they weren't ready. Growing up in Maple Falls, I always thought something was wrong with me. Not because anyone said it out loud, but because of how often they didn't say anything at all. Sophia's older sister was the sun. Blonde, artistic, loud, and impossible to ignore. My parents built their world around her. Dance recitals? I got a polite clap. Sophia's piano recitals? Standing ovations and dinner parties after. Even on my graduation day from high school valedictorian, full scholarship, I remember my mom saying, "You're lucky, you're so smart, Emily." Sophia's gifts are harder to measure. It took me years to realize that was her way of saying, "We don't understand you, and maybe we don't care to." I learned to shrink myself. To disappear behind books and A's and quiet excellence. Because being brilliant wasn't celebrated in our house, it was expected. But art? That was divine. Sophia's messy oil paintings were framed like masterpieces. Her failed community college classes were finding her path. Her moving back home at 28? A creative reset. Meanwhile, I got into Northwestern, double majored in economics and psychology, and no one even helped me pack. At one point, I asked my mom why no one came to send me off. "Oh, sweetie," she said, barely glancing up from peeling carrots. "Sophia had a gallery opening that night, you understand." And I did. I always understood. But it hurt. God, it hurt. The first real break happened when I met Mark. He was my TA in sophomore econ, the only person who ever made depreciation curves sound like poetry. Smart, patient, with a laugh that made you feel safe before you even knew why. We fell in love slowly, then all at once. He came from a modest family in Ohio. Warm, supportive, nothing flashy. Just the kind of love that shows up. When I brought Mark home the first time, I was nervous. He wore his best blazer, brought wine and flowers. But within minutes, my father was grilling him about income potential and retirement accounts. My mother, thin-lipped, asked if he planned to stay in finance or move up to something more prestigious. Mark laughed it off. I saw the flicker of hurt in his eyes. I should have said something then. But, like always, I swallowed it. Smiled. Changed the subject, protected their feelings instead of honoring ours. We got married at 23. Quiet ceremony. Intimate, perfect. My family didn't contribute a dime. "We paid for Sophia's big wedding," my mom said. "And you're always so independent. I figured you'd prefer to do it your way." That was code for, "You don't make noise, so we don't have to care." Still, I kept hoping. Hoping if I worked harder, achieved more, gave more, maybe they'd finally see me. Mark saw it. All of it. He never said a bad word about my parents, but his support was louder than any critique. He'd hold my hand tight in the car after awkward dinners, whispering, "You don't need their validation. You shine just fine on your own." We built a life from scratch. Mark worked his way up at a financial advisory firm in Chicago, eventually becoming partner. I became an office manager at an architectural firm. Not glamorous, but steady. I liked helping people organize chaos. When we decided to have a baby, we imagined it would be easy. It wasn't. 2 miscarriages. 1 failed IVF. Nights holding each other in silence, waiting for a heartbeat that never came. And then Mia. Our miracle. I was on bed rest for the final 2 months. Mark worked from home, cooked every meal, rubbed my swollen ankles, and read baby books out loud in ridiculous voices just to make me laugh. When Mia was born, he held her like she was made of glass and cried harder than I did. She had his eyes, his warmth, and all of my heart. We were a team, a real family. And yet, my parents visited twice that first year. Just 2 times. Always with comments like, "She's a cute baby, but Sophia's little gallery show is tonight," or "We don't want to get in your way. You seem to have it handled." Handled. That word again. Like love was a job I'd been assigned, and the better I performed, the less they needed to care. It wasn't one big betrayal. It was death by 1,000 dismissals. The time they skipped Mia's 3rd birthday to fly to Napa for Sophia's retreat. The Christmas they sent a check with no note while Sophia got a surprise visit and a new camera for her art. The Thanksgiving dinner where my father spent the whole meal asking Mark about stock picks, then turned to me and said, "Emily, can you clear the plates?" I never confronted them. I never screamed or cried. But something inside me hardened over time. A quiet knowing that no matter what I did, they'd always choose Sophia. They always had. But nothing could have prepared me for how far they'd take that favoritism the day Mark died. That was the day they didn't just choose Sophia's birthday. They chose to abandon their daughter when she was drowning. And when they came asking for money, Mark's money under the guise of retirement help, that quiet pain inside me began to stir. Because for the first time, I wasn't just sad. I was angry. And anger, when it's righteous, doesn't destroy. It transforms. Grief doesn't come in waves. That would be easier. Grief is fog. Heavy, silent, constant. Some days you can see a few feet ahead. Others, you're crawling blind. The first morning after Mark's funeral, I stared at the ceiling until Mia's voice pulled me back. "Mommy, do I still go to school today?" My instinct was to say no. To hold her. To keep the world out. But I realized we both needed the rhythm. The illusion of normal. So I packed her lunch like Mark would have. Wrote a silly joke on the napkin like he always did. She smiled, just a little. And that was enough. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by casseroles I couldn't eat and sympathy cards I didn't want to read. Then I opened Mark's laptop. Passwords, spreadsheets, insurance documents, it was all there. Organized, color-coded. He'd planned everything. He had even left a letter for me, sealed in an envelope marked, "In case of the unthinkable." I read it once. Then again. And again. It was Mark's voice, steady and reassuring. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you how serious the doctor's concerns were. I didn't want to scare you. But I've set everything up for you and Mia. You don't need to worry. Just live, love her, heal." That letter didn't fix anything. But it gave me something to stand on. I called Thomas, Mark's best friend and our estate planner. He walked me through everything: life insurance, trust funds, living expenses. He assured me that Mia was protected, her education paid for, and our home secure. But when I mentioned my parents' visit, their demand for 50%, this expression darkened. "They have no legal claim, Emily." And based on Mark's notes, he anticipated this. Thomas showed me a section in the trust documents. Mark had created a separate fund for Mia, one that couldn't be accessed until she was 25. It was airtight, untouchable. He wanted to make sure no one could guilt or manipulate you into giving it away, Thomas said. He mentioned your father had approached him before. I didn't cry. Not then. I was too stunned. Mark hadn't just planned financially, he had protected me emotionally. Even after death. That night, I sat on the floor of Mia's room, watching her color in silence. "What are you drawing?" I asked. She hesitated, then showed me a picture of our family, me, her, and Mark, with a big heart over our heads. But in the corner, she had drawn 2 smaller figures, facing away. "Those are Grandma and Grandpa," she said, "because they didn't look at me when Daddy died." My heart cracked again. She saw it. All of it. Even if she didn't have the words yet. From that moment on, I stopped trying to shield her from the truth and started showing her what strength looks like. I returned to work part-time at the architecture firm. My boss, surprisingly kind, offered flexible hours. Said, "Take what you need, we'll make it work." The first day back, I wore Mark's old blazer. Too big on me, but it felt like armor. I spent lunch breaks crying in the stairwell. Afternoons triple-checking spreadsheets because my brain was mush, but I showed up. And that counted for something. At night, I couldn't sleep. So I organized files, updated our budget, paid off the car. I tracked Mia's school calendar and meal prepped like a machine. I wasn't healing. Not yet. But I was rebuilding. 3 weeks later, Mark's younger brother flew in from Japan. He had taught English overseas for years. Charming, sarcastic, with the same crooked smile as Mark. "I'm not here to replace him," he said. "I'm here to keep my promise." He made me swear that if anything happened, I'd be here for you and Mia. He moved into our guest room without hesitation. Took Mia to school, helped with homework, cooked Sunday pancakes. He gave us air to breathe. And for the first time in weeks, I laughed. Meanwhile, my parents kept texting. Some messages were warm. "Thinking of you, sweetie." Others, transactional. "Have you made a decision about the insurance?" I didn't respond. Then Sophia chimed in. "You've always been selfish, Emily. Maybe now that you're rich, it finally shows." I stared at her message for a long time before deleting it. Not worth the energy. But the anger was simmering. And I could feel something inside me shifting. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was waking up. One afternoon, while Mia was at school, I found her sketchbook open on her desk. Inside, she'd drawn a picture of Mark holding her hand on a cloud. Below them, I was standing alone. But in the next page, she drew me with a cape. A red one. "You're my hero now, Mommy," she said when I asked. That simple sentence lit a fire in me I didn't know I still had. I called Thomas. If my parents escalate this, if they try something legal, or turn the family against me, what are my options? "We're already protected," he said. "But if you want to go on the record, we can prepare a formal notice of boundaries. It won't be necessary, unless they try something." They would. I knew it. The turning point came a month after Mark's death. I received a letter, official looking, from my father, on his company's letterhead. It outlined their proposal again. 50% to them, 15% to Sophia, for family continuity. It ended with, "If we can't reach a fair agreement, we'll have to reconsider our relationship with you and Mia." As if that was a threat. As if that was a loss. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I placed the letter back in the envelope, filed it under unworthy. Then I brewed tea, Saturday down with Marcus, and started planning. Because I realized I wasn't fighting just for me. I was fighting for Mark's legacy. For Mia's future. And for the version of myself I used to be too scared to let out. Not anymore. Sunday afternoon arrived with the weight of a storm. Mia stood beside me, gripping a manila envelope like it was a shield. She hadn't told me what was inside, only that it was for Grandpa and Grandma and that Daddy helped her with the idea. I didn't question her. Something in her eyes told me not to. We pulled into the driveway of my childhood home. I hadn't been back since Mark's funeral. It looked the same, yet everything had changed. I took a deep breath. "Are you sure you want to come inside with me?" Mia nodded. "You said we don't run from bullies." Even now, she was echoing her father. The moment we stepped inside, I felt the chill. The living room was full of parents, Sophia, Uncle James, Aunt Rita, even Dad's older brother Terry and his wife Barbara. They'd called in the reinforcements. My father sat in his recliner like a judge behind a bench. My mother wore a tight, performative smile. Sophia didn't even look up from her phone. "Emily," my father began, standing. "Thank you for coming. We need to speak as a family." "I brought Mia," I said. "Anything you want to say about her future, she has a right to hear." My mother frowned. "This might not be appropriate." "She's already lived through more than most adults," I interrupted. "She stays." They didn't waste time. "We've done the math. my father said, handing me a printed document. This isn't a demand, just a proposal. 50% of the insurance to your mother and me. 15 to Sophia. The rest remains with you, of course. I glanced at the paper. Numbers, breakdowns, justification. They had even listed Sophia's student loan balance and potential art business seed funds. You want 65%, I said flatly, of the money Mark left for his daughter. This is about family, Emily, my mother said. We supported you, we raised you, you owe us. I felt Mia shift beside me. You mean like how you showed up when Daddy died? She said quietly. The room froze. Sophia rolled her eyes. Sweetie, the adults are talking. No, Mia said, stepping forward. I am too. She pulled the envelope open with trembling hands and held up a piece of paper she'd drawn. It was styled like an invoice. At the top, bill for love and support. Not received. She read aloud. Being there the night Daddy died, $0, not provided. Helping Mommy when she cried, $0, not provided. Hugging me when I missed Daddy, $0, not provided. Being real grandparents, priceless, but never paid. And at the bottom, in her neat, careful handwriting. Total, $0. That's what you earned. No one spoke. The silence rang louder than any scream. My mother's eyes filled with tears, though whether from guilt or exposure, I couldn't tell. My father's hands trembled as he held the paper, staring at it like it was a court summons. I made it with Daddy, Mia said softly. He always said sometimes people need to see on paper how much they didn't do. Sophia opened her mouth, then closed it again. Even Uncle James looked away. I turned to my parents. My voice was calm, but every word cut like glass. You didn't just fail to show up when we needed you most. You saw Mark's death as a payday. You didn't ask if Mia was eating. You asked about insurance. My mother whispered. We were grieving too. You were at a birthday party. And you're punishing us for one mistake. No, I said. I'm protecting Mia from decades of them. My father stood up, puffing his chest. We are your parents, we deserve respect. Respect, I repeated, isn't inherited. It's earned. And you lost mine the moment you put $signs over your granddaughter's pain. My Aunt Barbara, bless her, finally spoke. This is wrong, Brad, she said to my father. What you're asking, it's disgusting. My Uncle Terry nodded silently. Sophia just stared at her shoes. I looked at Mia, who was clutching the empty envelope now like it had become her whole heart. We're done here, I said. Don't contact us again unless it's to apologize. Fully, sincerely. With action. We turned to leave. But before we reached the door, my father said one last thing. If you walk out, Emily, don't expect this family to welcome you back. I stopped. Then turned slowly. You never welcomed me in to begin with. That night, as we pulled into our driveway, Mia broke the silence. Was that okay, what I did? I reached for her hand. That was brave, honey. You made your dad proud. You made me proud. She leaned against me. Mom, do you think they'll ever change? I didn't answer right away. I think people show you who they are, I said. And sometimes, if they really want to, they can become someone better. Mia nodded, thoughtful. Then we'll wait and see. But we don't owe them anything, right? No, baby, I said. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up to 18 missed calls. 8 from my mother. 4 from my father. 6 from Sophia. A mix of angry voicemails, passive-aggressive texts, and one message that said, "How dare you use your daughter to shame us in front of the family?" But the only message I saved came from Aunt Barbara. You were right to walk away. If you ever need support, I'm here. And then one more. From Mark's college roommate, Brian. Saw the invoice. Marcus sent me a picture. That kid's got Mark's heart. Don't let anyone dull her shine. That day, Mia asked if we could bake cookies. Like Daddy used to, she said. So we did. And while the smell of sugar and vanilla filled the house, I realized something. Grief didn't disappear, but neither did love. And we still had plenty of that. 2 weeks passed in silence. No calls, no surprise visits, just peace. Heavy, quiet, unfamiliar peace. Marcus had flown back to Japan, promising to return over the summer. Kevin's parents called every other day. Mia's school counselor reported she was smiling again, just a little, but it was real. We were healing. Slowly. Imperfectly. And then on what would have been our wedding anniversary, I got a letter. Not typed. Not cold. Handwritten. The return address was my parents. Dear Emily and Mia. We've spent the last few weeks reflecting on what we did, on what we didn't do. We failed you both. And we failed Kevin's memory. There are no excuses. Only regret. We won't ask for money. We won't ask for forgiveness. Only that someday you might let us prove we can change. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't defensive. And for the first time, it sounded honest. I showed it to Marcus, who'd just returned for his summer sabbatical. It's a start, he said carefully. But trust is rebuilt with time, not paper. I nodded. I don't want to give them a second chance, but Mia deserves to know what real accountability looks like, he finished. Exactly. So I didn't write back. But I didn't throw it away, either. I tucked it into Kevin's keepsake box, the one with his silly notes, Mia's hospital bracelet, and his tie from our first anniversary. Then I let time do its work. 3 months later, another envelope came. No requests. Just a birthday card for Mia with a hand-drawn constellation and a short message. We remembered you said you liked stars. We hope this makes you smile. Love, Grandma and Grandpa. Inside was a gift. A beginner's astronomy book. Not pink. Not glittery. Not tone-deaf. Thoughtful. Mia held the book for a long time. Do you think they're trying? She asked. I think they might be, I answered. Do we have to let them back in? No, I said honestly. But if we do, it's on our terms. She nodded. Then maybe just a little. To see. So I arranged a short meeting. At her favorite ice cream shop. 30 minutes, public. Boundaries clear. They showed up on time. Dressed simply. No tears, no speeches. Just presence. They asked Mia about school, listened when she talked about her space project, and didn't mention the pastor, the money once. When the time was up, my father asked quietly, could we maybe do this again next month? And for the first time, he didn't sound entitled. He sounded grateful. The following visits were small and spaced apart. Mia remained cautious, but open. My parents brought books. Not gifts. They asked about Mia's feelings. Not our finances. And when I set a limit, they respected it. They didn't become perfect. But they became intentional. And that mattered more. A year after Kevin passed, we hosted a backyard gathering in his honor. Burgers. Music. Laughter. The way he would have wanted. I invited my parents for the first time since the confrontation. They arrived quietly. Contributed a photo album of Kevin the first hadn't seen in years. And when it was time for toasts, they didn't make it about themselves. They simply sat in the back, hands folded, watching their granddaughter laugh. After the guests left, my mother approached me near the garden. We've been going to therapy, she said. Real therapy. Not just talking it out. I said nothing. We've uncovered a lot about how we raised you and Sophia, she continued. Things I wish we'd seen sooner. Then she did something I never expected. She looked me in the eye and said, I don't want to be forgiven, Emily. I want to be different. That's all. And for the first time in my adult life, I believed her. Sophia took longer. She lashed out on social media, played the victim, tried to divide the extended family. But eventually, when the family didn't rally to her side, she emailed me. No apologies. Just one line. I've been jealous of you for a long time. Kevin's death made it worse. I'm working on it. It wasn't much. But it was more than I ever expected. As for Miasha flourished. She still missed her dad. She always will. But she also laughed again. Painted her room blue, the color he loved on her. Wrote silly science poems. Started a star jar where she stored paper stars with messages for Daddy. And one day, out of the blue, she said, "I think Grandpa and Grandma are learning. Slowly. But they still have a long way." I smiled. So do we, baby. So do we. I didn't spend a dime of Kevin's life insurance. I set up a scholarship in his name for students studying finance with a heart for community work. I opened a trust for Mia that no one, not even Mech, can touch until she's 25. And I went back to school part-time, studying nonprofit management, because I want to do more. Not to prove anything to my family, but to honor the man who believed I could. On the second anniversary of Kevin's death, Mia and I sat by the lake where he used to take her fishing. She slipped her hand into mine and said, "I think Daddy would be proud of us." I looked at her, this wise, fierce little girl who stood her ground at 8 years old, and nodded. "He'd be proud of you most of all." That night, as I tucked her in, she whispered something that stayed with me. "Mom, sometimes when people see how they hurt you, they start to change. But only if you let them see it." I don't know where she heard it. Maybe Kevin told her once. Maybe she just knew. But it was true. Forgiveness isn't for the unworthy. It's for the strong. It doesn't mean forgetting. It means setting boundaries and still choosing peace. That's what we did. And it saved us. Because sometimes the real inheritance isn't money. It's clarity, courage, and the choice to break the cycle. And you? Have you ever been dismissed, underestimated, or pressured by the very people who should have protected you? Did you ever draw your own invoice in your mind and finally walk away? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Because you're not alone. And your strength? That's your legacy.